We've seen unemployment start to tick up, inflation continue to pull back.
It feels like a recession out there, and the data keeps telling us there isn't one. It's been very confusing because the data is not what the world feels like.
Seeing Trump just kind of let his enemy talk and defeat himself was brilliant strategy.
Hey guys, everybody, welcome back to the King's Table. We are back for another great episode. I think you're going to love this episode. This week, we talk about Aaron's deep thoughts while he was in Lake Tahoe. We had some good reflection about what happened there in the life of an entrepreneur. And of course, there's some sentiment about rate cuts are here. Is the dam of the economy strong enough to hold all these different resiliencies? And let's talk about that. Of course, we had to talk about the debate. How could we ignore the chaos of what it is politics in America today? And are the Democrats stuck with Biden? We have a little bit of discussion about Biden and Trump. So I think you're going to love today's episode. Thanks so much for listening. And here we are at the King's Table. All right. So, of course, before we get into the presidential stuff, let's talk about some updates. Let's go around the table. What's going on with business? Mooch, you made it to Tahoe last week, stressed out. What's going on? Can't relax. Tell me what's going on with the business. Let's make around the table. And I want to know what everybody's doing. Let's catch up with the team.
Yeah, I'm starting to get ads on Instagram about my adrenaline addiction and how I need to go do detox. And when Instagram knows, it's a problem. I mean, the biggest news in all of our worlds is Maddie had a little baby. And so I can't wait for him to get to talk about that, but getting to see some of the pictures and the videos. Man, why do we do all this stuff? It's for the moments like that where kids make everything more difficult and everything more fun, but there's nothing cooler than a one-day-old baby. So I'm super jealous of those moments of Maddie. We were in my family was in Tahoe last week for the 4th of July. We went up there for almost a week. And 10 years ago, I did this, and maybe 9 years ago, I did the same trip. And at that time, we took a week and a half off. I closed my businesses. I even brought up most of my workers, and we had these lakeside units. And I remember that being such a fun, relaxing, wasting money, but just a 10 out of 10 experience, right? And I found myself this time with everything to be happy about. I saw my little boy getting to play with his cousin in the water. I saw my nieces, my nephews. We had so many people in the family there. Weather was perfect compared to Austin. It was 70 degrees and sunny at night. We had to put on sweatshirts. And I'm sitting on the beach, and I should be reading a book in peace and meditating and thinking about how grateful my life was. And I realized I just have serious issues right now with sitting still and relaxing in the moment. And it wasn't always like that for me. It wasn't something that I had I remember 10 years ago relaxing during those times. And so I don't know right now if I have a stimulus problem because of the world we live in and the instant gratification and needing adrenaline and needing to do something. Not being able to sit still and relax is a problem. And so I don't know if it's a problem based on I've gotten older, based on I'm addicted to Instagram, or if it's a stress related thing because I am working around the clock right now. And I do remember that 10 years ago when I went there, my companies were printing money and I was barely working to do it. I wasn't working very hard. I had set up the system and the system was working. And right now I'm in grow mode and setting up systems, and we're hiring multiple people. Every single week we have new hires, right? We had a meeting yesterday with 25 employees at it. Some of them got to meet each other for the first time, and half of them have been hired in the last month, right? Some of them have been with me and David for years, but some of them were hired in the last month. So I don't know. I don't know if you guys ever feel this. Do you guys find problems sitting still? Is that an entrepreneur thing? Is it a business thing? Or is it just a sign of the times of, I don't know, stress in business?
Mikey, what do you think?
I was just thinking about, so the answer is yes. But I think it's also the season because right now I'm in such a busy season. I've read, I think I threw this book in the chat with you guys, but I've been reading Jack Carr's books, which I picked up 5 weeks ago. And I've read all 7 books that are 300 plus pages in the last month. But
Damn.
I've been not really on Instagram or, watching TV. And I think it's because I'm in just such a busy season that I need to just chill. And so I've just been I've actually had a hard time going to bed at night reading this book, and they're good books, but you know, and then Aaron, I've found other seasons that I'm in when also really busy, but like growth mode, which it kind of sounds like maybe that's what you're in, where you're just so energized that like you can't shut it off because you're so inspired by the work you're doing. So I think you can be in busy seasons with different types of work. Like I'm getting my ass handed to me right now. And yes, hiring, fixing problems, traveling, but it's not it's not necessarily like startup, like inspiring type work. So I think there's just different seasons too, man. And I don't know, maybe you're just addicted to Instagram and that's all it really is. But I think it just depends on what we have going on in our life.
I know I had these feelings at times where I was like, I have way too much stuff to be doing to be sitting here on the beach watching my kids play and relaxing. And whether it's a guilt thing it's just complicated. There was just a lot of thoughts in that. Like, man, there's so much stuff that I need to be doing that I'm behind on that I should be doing that instead of relaxing. So is it a guilt thing? Like not feeling like I can relax? Is it a not? Or am I just being a bad dad and I just don't appreciate being a parent like I used to? There's all sorts of things.
I think it's a lot of it is in relation to how big your goals are and how far away you might feel like you are, and knowing that, or how close you might feel like you are, knowing that those opportunities, you know, those seasons and those opportunities come in waves. And so sometimes you gotta swim out and paddle on and get on that wave, and you gotta ride it as long as you can. And it's like, you know, when you're riding a wave, you can't just stop riding the surfboard and staying focused and, you know, looking at where you're going and navigating, you know, the stuff that's in front of you. You got to ride that wave. Now you could take some pauses in between, you know, sets of those waves and sit on the board for a little bit and take in the sun and, you know, enjoy. But I think that's potentially, you know, part of maybe the thought pattern around that. The other side of it is you might be putting certain things up on a pedestal as more important than the things that really are more important, like taking time out and spending it with your family and chilling out and saying, who gives a shit if you're going to make another 2 or 5 or 10 million bucks? Your kids won't, and they won't care. They're going to remember dad was on the phone and he was not present in Tahoe, and he cared more about these things than he really did about, you know, us when we were on those vacations. And that might be a little raw and ruthless and candid, but I think there probably is some truth in that. From how I've seen you operate in certain seasons, you get super hyper fixed on things that I wouldn't prioritize over the things that you have that most people would kill for.
I love
Isn't that
listening
crazy?
because Mooch, you're saying things that a lot of people are probably thinking, and Maddie did such an eloquent job of responding to that. But he's also saying things that people are thinking, which is what this podcast is so beautiful about. It's like, this is real shit. This is real contrast that people struggle with, and, you know, determining what we value and how we manage our time. If you have big goals, what do you do with it all? Definitely Instagram is a drug, bro. And I think what's also interesting is, like, I've been off Instagram for like 6 months. I miss all our chats in Instagram. If it's in our text chat, I see it. If you guys group chat on Instagram, the only time I see it is right before we start recording. So I miss all those because I'm no longer on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on X. I took all of it off. And I'm totally in a season of grinding right now. But I think it's really interesting too. I think how much distraction there is on social media. But I think also for you, like, I'd love you to respond to this, is like, how much is your business centered around you? Right? You are the face brand of everything that you do. And therefore, if you're really like not doing anything, if you're not working, you've created an ecosystem where nothing else happens. If Mooch is not juiced, if Mooch is not excited and energizing people, then like we just don't know what to do.
Yeah. So there's the I love you guys, and this the art of the human experience, right? And the human experience that we go through in all sorts of different ways. You know, we've seen those memes that are like, the only person that's going to remember that you worked late was your kids, right? When you're dying, the only people that remember this. But then there's this other weird thing of the way that we go all in on the verge of bankruptcy so many times in our lives, that there's like, yeah, but they're going to remember if we lose our house. And fair, like but that's probably being more grim than possible. Or I think for sure my comparison from 10 years ago to now, I know that the parts of my business that were different is 10 years ago, I could leave the country for 3 weeks and my company would make the same amount of money. And right now, if I take 3 weeks off, it definitely doesn't. Now, that's why I'm in hiring mode, and that's why we're in building mode. This new org chart. So this business got spun up about 60 days ago. Like, check out this org chart, right? For a company that launched 60 days ago. It's friggin' wild, right? Like
a lot of people.
There's a lot of people and a lot of different things going on and a lot of money getting moved on a brand new company. So maybe it's just normal to feel like, man, there's so much stuff to do, as long as the goal and our business goes in seasons. Like, I've had the years where I traveled the world, and maybe as long as the goal is to keep top, is like, all right, this is a season of growth, but make sure that you get yourself out of that org chart so you can enjoy the fruits of the labor and be able to sit on a beach and relax.
I think as long as you're having fun, no one should judge you.
Yeah. I don't think it has to be sitting on a beach to relax and unplug and be present, right? Like I think you can be in a total season of chaos and grinding and still find a way to be present. I think that's a personal choice and personal disciplines, and that's an inside job more so than it is what's going on around me that gives me permission to be this person. I think you can be that person in all seasons and maybe morph and adapt. And to your credit too, Mooch, I'm throwing, some darts at you, right, to get you thinking. On the other side, there are so many people that haven't made the sacrifices, that haven't taken the risks, that haven't, grinded in seasons that maybe most people are taking off and giving themselves permission to do things that others aren't doing, or maybe that most people are doing. And that's why you are where you're at today. That's why you are successful in the capacity that you are. That's why you have an org chart like that sitting in front of you, why those reasons for a business opportunity coming. So it's easy to say that. I know for me personally, I've had plenty of opportunities that I've honestly let go that I could have made a lot more money along the way, but I chose things that, again, to me, and I'm not saying anything bad about you or that this is you. What I'm saying is, for my own journey, I've said I would much rather in this season of my family be way more present and purposeful and in proximity to them than, and that being more important to me than missing out on building a 10 or a 15 or a $50 million company. Because I also know that I'm never going to get those seasons back with them ever. And I will have this is me trusting in my own process and my own journey that I'm on, that if I keep doing what I'm doing while having the balance and priorities being where they are with my family, if I do that during this entire season, I'm still going to give myself a chance in that later season to create a 50 or 100 or a $1 billion company, and potentially even surpass the people that sacrifice all those things. But I'm going to have that, and I'm still going to catch up to them in that process too. That's my belief that I tell myself. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But the one thing I know I don't want to live with regret on is going, man, I wish I didn't build that $100 million company and I could go back and spend more time on the beach with my kids in Lake Tahoe and them feel like I was present with them.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest fallacies for business owners is thinking that we found center. And this relates to our personal life too. But, we were sitting at dinner the other night, and Dylan, my oldest son, he asked me the question. He said, Dad, if you died, or if you and Mom died, would we be able to run your business? And man, that hit me right between the eyes, because, there's all this conversation out there about, work on your business, not in your business. Don't be, even back to what we were saying, and we go through seasons. And I think what's so challenging as an entrepreneur is to make sure that we just keep checking back in. And those kind of questions, like what Dylan asked me, are a check-in question. I was actually telling Dylan from our team this morning, I said, I'm going to actually add that to my quarterly, check-in with myself. If Kara and I died today, what would happen to our business? Because how many times have we, looked at our trust and looked at everything that we've got going on in life and what would happen if we die and do we have enough life insurance. But it's so easy as an entrepreneur to get like, and not just entrepreneurs, but even as just individuals to think that we're centered and then wake up with a question like that, where, you wake up and one of your kids asks, like, if you died, could we take over your business? And I'm like, the answer to that was no. There's no way you could. In fact, I don't know how many people could, because, and we talked to him about a couple people, like call this person. But when was the last time I had this conversation with my kids that are young adults? Like, what would you do if we died? And I looked at Kara immediately and I said, I need more life insurance. But I think
right, that's the solution.
Yeah, I think the point that I'm making is like, we got to check in on this stuff consistently. Well, Aaron, the beach was a check-in for you, but like, we need this.
Well, the thing about the beach is that,
yeah.
And so like for us, vacations are not really vacations. They're time to actually get out of the mundane, to go think about life, business, strategy, all those things. I always tell people in their offices, like, no, you guys are going to outwork us, because literally from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to bed, we're thinking about business all the time. The problem is that in our everyday life, you got all these people around you, you're stuck in the patterns, you're doing all the time. You don't have time to step away. And like Mike just said, ask the better, bigger questions, having these conversations. I mean, we've kind of injected thinking into our life through this podcast, right? It's like in our weekly schedule, we've said, look, for an hour and a half, we're going to stop what we're doing and we're going to think about our thinking, think about what we're doing, think about what's important, think about the world, what are we learning, et cetera, right? And I think people forget how important it is to think about those things. And it doesn't just happen naturally. Like, it happens when you're walking, you're like, oh shit, maybe I'd do that. So I think it's very fascinating, very, very fascinating.
Well, I left for sure thinking that I need to figure out ways and times to get back in habit of slowing down again. Right. Some of my best ideas happen when when I go to church during worship. So many crazy ideas I have to send myself emails during worship at church. And I haven't done that in a few weeks, or even going to get the massage. And so it's really like, man, when I've got an Ironman I'm training for, then I'm on the bike an hour a day. I'm in the sauna every day. And so I need something in my world right now to go like, no, this is your slow down time for that. So but it was an interesting experience. It was a great holiday experience where the family will say, hey, we had an amazing time. And they got to eat at their favorite restaurants in Sacramento. And I found myself going, why am I not enjoying this as much as I should? So I think that hopefully that resonates with some people out there.
I think with everybody. It doesn't matter how successful you are. It's so easy to get caught up in things that aren't aligned with what we really, really want. And so I commend you for just being aware of it. Most people are just like, all right. And they move on and they keep going down the same bad path of habits that don't serve them, or putting priorities over things that are way more important to them deep down in their soul, but they don't choose to have so good for you for being aware and figuring out a way to recommit to swinging the pendulum back in another way. I mean, that's the beauty of life, is like nothing ever stays in balance. It's just counterbalance and awareness.
I remember a couple of months ago when we were talking about this, we were talking about a similar topic a few months ago. Mike said, he's like, I'm actually in a season where my kids are, he's an empty nester now. So he's actually working more. He's like, I'm in a season where I can work more. I don't have to worry about raising the kids and spending time with them in that way. And so, that kind of inspires me, is like that give and take. I'm okay with giving on some things now, because I know that in the future, if I want to, I can, by example of Mike, right?
Can we just shift real fast over to the fact that I think I'm going to be right and Aaron's going to be wrong about rate cuts?
Dude,
do it.
Because
jump to the article.
Let's get into
Maddie's predictions.
Let's get into Maddie's money corner. Maddie, kick us off.
Yeah.
Well, I just think we're seeing more and more discussions and sentiment from the Fed. Specifically, Powell came out yesterday in front of Congress in his kind of, weekly and monthly addresses. PPI, by the way, and CPI inflation reporting will have come out yesterday when this airs. And predictions right now from most of the big financial groups out there are anywhere from inflation coming in from 3 to 3.2, 3.3. So if that ends up being the case, then for sure going to see multiple rate cuts this year. The market, at least from the analysts,
Did you say multiple?
Yes, I did say multiple. That means more than one. And I believe that we're for sure going to see one. I mean, they're not going to be anything substantial. We're talking 25 basis point cuts, right? So I don't think that's really going to move the needle in a really big way. But when they start, they can't really stop in the capacity that most people just think they can. So, when they really start doing that, I believe that it's going to lead to more rate cuts. I think I even heard as of yesterday, I forget where the article was, they talked about once they start cutting rates, there's going to be a total of 8 rate cuts behind it. Now, again, I'll preface it with, we heard that there was going to be 6 this year, and we haven't seen one to date, halfway through the year. That being said, we've seen unemployment start to tick up a little bit. We have seen, inflation continue to pull back. Cutting rates too late, according to Powell, could unduly weaken the economy, even though it's expanding at a solid pace. He said labor market conditions have cooled but remain relatively strong. We'll see more information on that coming out this week as well. That being said, I do believe that they need to ease rates in some capacity. That pressure is mounting more and more, and you're hearing some of that sentiment pretty clearly in how Powell is talking. And I am still very much of the camp that we're going to see a rate cut, our first rate cut in September. And I do think that we'll probably see more in Q4 as well.
What do you think is the most important thing he's looking at with rate cuts? Because there's a lot of different factors, right? Like the stock market's still going up every day. Home prices are still going up. So what do you think is the thing that he says, despite stock market going up, despite inflation not being at that level yet? Or do you think that it's inflation and it's just going to get there? Or do you think it's the job? Because he talks about a lot of things. I got an eye on jobs. I got an eye on this. But half the things they measure are still going through the roof.
Yeah, that's a really good point, I think, for discussion, being that I was having this discussion like an hour ago. And it was the same thing of like, what are they looking at? What does he really want to see in order to
what's he care about the most?
It's time, right? And he even said yesterday that, elevated inflation is not the only risk that we're dealing with right now, and that there's so many different variables. He's also said that, we don't want to wait until inflation gets all the way back to 2% to start, easing. And so it's interesting, right? Because they're saying, hey, we don't need inflation to get back to 2% to give us permission to start cutting rates. I think that, unemployment is definitely something they would like to see have a little bit more pain and, spillage into the streets. What I also thought was interesting, and this goes back to Mike's point in previous discussions, is the Fed not caring about real estate. I don't think they care about real estate. And that is not really tying into their rate cut decision at all, even though housing affordability is at an all-time low, right? Rates are where they're at. Inventory is relatively, low still in comparison to 2019, highest peak levels. Absorption and demand is still relatively strong, even though the velocity of how many transactions are happening is, a fraction of what maybe we were used to over the course of the last couple of years. Even with the market being that challenging in real estate, the pain, the distress, and the spillage of that into other areas of the economy is nowhere to be seen. So until we see another, 2008-ish level of pain, where we're seeing the pain of real estate now start spilling into all these other factors of the economy that really matter, they're not going to make any of their rate decisions based on real estate, in my opinion. They don't care about it. The only thing that they may be factoring in is the fact that they need to protect their banks, and they need to protect this, commercial real estate bubble that is right around the corner, and the trillions of dollars in debt that is coming due in multifamily and office and, a couple other, asset classes. So that could be potentially factored into it, but I don't think it's a leading factor right now of what they want to see. But I'm curious, Mike, because I know you always got some very good, unique perspectives. I saw and I felt the momentum, the sentiment shift in your soul of you were more on Aaron's side. Now you said, hey, I think Matty might be onto something here. So what are you thinking, Mikey?
I don't know. It was probably 8 or 10 episodes back. Well, it was the last time that he had his announcement, and I brought that video on where he was specifically focusing on the dual mandate. It's two things: keep inflation under control, and maintain a job market. If you look at this Bloomberg article that I actually put in the idea board today, it starts off by saying Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said officials are increasingly wary of potential risks to the labor market from high borrowing costs as they seek more evidence inflation is slowing down. So I think one of the challenges, I think it just brought together when you look at this labor thing. And he also said too, and Maddie, you touched on this. So this was a quote from Derek Tang, and he said his focus is squarely on the labor market. I think the fact that we're finally seeing the labor market calm down, and you guys are right, they're looking at a lot of different factors. Maddie, you brought up the banking issue. I had an article that I pulled up a week ago. I might have put it in the idea board before too, but the amount of unrealized losses in the banks again last quarter went up substantially. And so, what does that attribute? Primarily the reason for that is because of high interest rates. It's a lot of their bonds and, things that they issued at 3% when interest rates are 6%. And so I do think it's a combination of a lot of it, but I think this labor market cooling is probably the thing that makes them finally feel comfortable. And again, this Bloomberg article starts off by saying that, this is being caused by businesses not being able to get access to lending. Why? Because interest rates are higher. So, but this doesn't change what we're constantly talking about. There's so much more at stake here, and there's such a duality. I was actually talking with Dylan and Tim earlier today when we were going through this article, and it takes a few minutes because there's so much confusion in it. So lower the interest rates because businesses are having a hard time borrowing, which means unemployment is going up because people are losing their job, which also means people are spending less money. So you drop interest rates, what happens? And Maddie, I like what you said. I don't think it's going to be major drops, because if they cut too far, then businesses have access to borrowing. They go on a rampage again. People start buying houses. We're on a I think we're going to be in this zone for quite a while. People are waiting for massive rate cuts so that things get back to normal. That's not going to happen. This is the new normal, because if we drop rates too much, then businesses explode, hiring goes back in, unemployment drops, people start buying houses. I actually put another article in the King's Table idea board. It said, we don't need to go into it, but for every 1% drop in interest rates, that creates 5 million more qualified buyers.
But we're talking specifically to real estate, right?
Yeah, but I'm just saying it's all tied together, because even if you talk specifically to real estate, if you drop interest rates too far, this article started off by saying Jerome Powell is specifically focused on businesses not being able to borrow. So what do? If you drop the interest rates too much, then businesses go on a borrowing binge and start hiring a whole bunch of people again. And what does that do? That raises the job market. Slowing down is actually a good thing at the end of the day, because how hard is it to hire people? The wage inflation, everything else. And if your wages have increased 10, 15% over the last 12 months, what does that do to the cost of goods and services? It makes those go up. And so that creates more inflation. So and I do think we're going to probably see a rate cut, but I don't think it's going to be very much.
Baby.
I think we're in for kind of a new normal.
But I think if 30,000 feet, we're really trying to thread a needle, right? Because what you guys are all talking about is that, he could drop the interest rates a little bit. He could keep them the same. Either way, what this is all signaling is, generally speaking, the economy is very strong.
Mm-hmm.
In all major segments, and banks are holding on with the amount of debt and the amount of interest rates they're paying.
That dam is experiencing more and more pressure, though, and I think that's the threading of the needle, right? Is how do we ease some of that pressure off, because
so that the dam doesn't break. But
the
dam is pretty strong, though. What we're saying is that the dam seems to be damn strong.
I don't think the dam's very strong, because
it's weakening.
Again, one of the main reasons, why I think Jerome Powell is focused on the jobs market is because if we get a major uptick in unemployment, spending slows down substantially, businesses stop producing. And so I don't think the dam is very strong, actually. I don't think it is.
Well,
Fascinating.
so check this out, and this is, again, I don't think this is a major point that Jerome Powell's looking at, but again, this could be foreshadowing some potential of what the future looks like. This was a recent report from Atlanta Fed, and they estimate for real U.S. GDP quarterly growth in Q2 2024 is down to 1.7%. The estimate is down from 4.2% seen in mid-May and from 2.2% seen on June 28th. So that's a pretty significant delta there when we're talking about GDP estimated growth. And if this estimate turns out to be correct, it'll be the second consecutive quarter of GDP growth below 2% of the 1.4% that we saw in Q1. So again, and then he went down and put this comment down here that I thought was interesting. At the current pace, GDP growth could easily turn negative as we head into 2025. The question becomes, can the Fed continue to hold rates higher for longer without a recession? So trying to thread that needle, right, is they're trying to keep our economy moving in the right direction, stepping up without it going too hot and crazy, without lowering rates too much to where they ease some of the pain once we, get to that point where they feel like they can do that without it making it get on this hot, uptick again. So to Aaron's, comment of them not holding, I think they could do a few little rate cuts and it would be almost the equivalent of keeping the rates where they're at, but alleviating some of the pressure in the key areas of the economy that they need to let some of that pressure out of without it going crazy again. And I think that's ultimately what the Fed is trying to do, and do very carefully right now, and determine when it makes sense to do that. And I think that's why at least my sentiment is that they're going to do multiple rate cuts this year. They're going to be small.
I have another
They're not going
question.
to make that big of a difference, but it will psychologically shift some things and physically shift some things in the market.
He has done a really good job, I think we would agree, to manage his strategy over the last year and a half, considering all the political climate. But now the political climate has changed quite a bit. Do you think that is changing his opinion? Do you think now that that we're closer to an election and it changes his strategy?
No.
The Feds are bulletproof.
Yeah.
Like they can't get thrown out. Like that's why they're elected that way. It's supposed to be this protected.
I thought I don't think that's
not even not elected is the wrong word, but like
they are appointed. Can't they get replaced?
I don't know. My understanding is no, like that they can't get replaced by the presidency.
No, they can get replaced, but I don't think that factors in heavily to. I mean, in the world of politics and in handshaking, I'm sure there's some influence there, but I don't really think. I was actually listening to something about this a while back, and I think what's more concerning for like a Jerome Powell is the legacy that he leaves.
Yeah, I think we talked about that last time, or I heard that somewhere else. But you're spot on. I agree with you completely.
They have 4-year terms, but they're elected, but they're appointed for 4-year terms, but they're appointed 2 years into the presidency. So regardless, he'll be the Fed chair until 2026, even though it's an election year.
One thing that's interesting, I think, on how good the economy is doing, and I don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but I saw this chart this morning, the S&P 500 and how well it's doing. But if you remove the top 6 companies that are all tech companies, so the S&P 500 has got like a 14.35% return or something over this period of time. If you remove those top tech companies, it's 3.25%. So I think the indicator in that is, yes, the stock market overall is doing well, but if you remove these unicorn tech companies and you look at how well the rest of normal companies are doing, 3.25% is not that great.
I mean, so my prediction or response to all of it, right, is I think the new factor that's coming up that they have not been measuring, that hasn't been part of the equation at all, is that possible negative GDP growth. And the negative GDP growth 2 years or 2 quarters in a row. I mean, they changed the definition last time we were in a recession for like 4 quarters. They said maybe it's not that. But most realists still say a recession is 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. And now that there might be, Powell doesn't want to see 1 quarter of negative GDP growth, because that's essentially been the promise or the belief. Like the whole definition of that soft landing is we never get into recession. Right. And now that that definition's changed, avoiding even a single quarter of negative GDP growth is a new part of that equation. It's really funny because yes, if you Google the articles from yesterday, now there's an 80% chance of a rate cut by the end of the year. February 1st, there was a 94% chance of a rate cut by the end of this year. And then in May, it was like a 20% chance. So these percentages dance and they jump. But the new thing, and it's, again, I just looked it up, and it was like the market had priced 100% chance of a rate cut in February 1st, 2024, right? They believe there was no doubt. And then that obviously changed in May. And then even last week, they said, there was still only barely a chance of it. And then today it's like, now we're almost certain there's going to be a rate cut this year. So man, do I think there's a better chance today of a rate cut than I did a month ago? Yep. I think there's a better chance of it now. Like I don't need to say like my prediction a year ago is going to be right forever, but there is this new factor that's coming into it where I won't be as surprised as I would be. I won't be as surprised if we get a rate cut now. If we get 2 rate cuts based on everything I know now in the next 6 months of the year, I will be shocked. A quarter rate point, what will it really change in the world, in anyone's business? Right. 0. What will it change in people's mentality? A lot.
But that's just gonna spike more spending, increase debt. Is that the pressures of the dam we're talking about? Like,
so I think I told you guys, I had lines of credit where I made big payments on them, and they sent me an email afterward, and I made a $50,000 payment on my credit line, and they sent me an email and said, "Thanks for your payment. We've just reduced your credit line by $50,000. I was paying it with the expectation I was going to get to draw on it again. And I've had that happen with several credit lines in the last 2 to 3 months. I have probably $150,000 to $200,000 in less credit available from accounts that I've been paying on, that when I made my payments, they said, "Cool, thank you for that. We've just reduced your credit line." Now, is that because they're trying to lend less, or is it because it's not as profitable to lend because they need to have, like, will the quarter point rate cut have those lines of credit? People go, okay, we're making money again to cover overhead, we can start lending again. I don't really know, but I think consumer sentiment might help people. Maybe it's just going to help businesses hire again, because they're going to go, okay, the bleeding is over. But part of me goes, the damage has been done. Like, it does feel, I've said for 6 to 9 months, it feels like a recession out there, and the data keeps telling us there isn't one. And it feels like the housing market's getting crushed, and the data says it's not. So for me, it's been very confusing because the data is not what the world feels like. But I have definitely set into this camp of, why would they lower rates? It's probably better if they just keep them the way they are. But sentiment today, if you look at the news, is it's all but certain they're going to be one before the end of the year. I won't be as surprised at this point based on today's data. But the weird thing, just like what Ash just said, by them saying that, I wonder what the market will do over the next 2 weeks. And I wonder what will happen to GDP over the next 2 weeks, to where they'd say, like, okay, now we don't need to do it because people price it into the market. It's complicated.
Thursday's a big day. I mean, Thursday's going to tell a lot, right? I mean, we could be completely changing our tunes by the time this episode is being aired, based on what data came out on Thursday. And
but I mean, a much better chance that Maddie's prediction 3 months ago is going to be correct instead of mine, based on the news of this week. And that new flag to me is the GDP growth thing, because that is the big shock. If you actually get negative GDP growth, nobody wants that.
I think you nailed it, Aaron, on the consumer sentiment, though, because I don't think that, cutting rates a little bit is actually going to change anything. That's what I said. I think this is the new normal. I think people are getting so tired and concerned that if they don't do something pretty soon, I mean, even again, just seeing business owners cut jobs or not hire additional jobs. It's just a sentiment thing. So is a quarter rate cut going to change anything? No. But I think if they don't start doing something, people are going to start clamming up and going in bunkers, and then we're going to have a shit show.
Yeah. Interesting. There's a lot of factors at play. I don't know. My world is seems very healthy. So
Do you guys
for us, it doesn't even matter.
do you guys think it's
I don't know if
interesting
it
that
matters.
Trump appointed Powell and Biden could have replaced him 2 years ago and didn't? Like
I don't know that
it's interesting. That's why I don't think it's as political as people try to say about elections. Because they're like, well, what about the election? Well, by the time the person gets elected, they're in there for another 2 years anyway. It's a little surprising to me. I just don't think they change Fed chairs that often.
I don't think it's really bipartisan at all. I think they're really looking for somebody, because if you think about it, it doesn't matter in that role what party it's affiliated with. If that Fed chair does a good job for the economy, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican, the president looks good.
Yeah. Well, in all fairness, Biden hasn't fired anybody. So why would he fire Powell?
True.
Are we going to talk about the debate?
Let's do it. It's time. It's time.
Oh my God. We've been
guys,
stretching this one.
I don't even know how to start this conversation besides saying I feel like we're just in a really sad spot. So let's go around the table. For those of you guys who are listening, it's been almost 10 days or so, maybe almost 2 weeks since the debate, the presidential debate. About a week ago, obviously it was a terrible debate. About a week ago, President Biden, trying to clean up the mess he created, did a sit down 22-minute intense interview with stimulating conversations, barely made through it. And this last week has been an absolute political disaster for him. So let's go around the table. I mean, I think there's a lot of questions to be asked. And I want to really be thorough on this, is like, well, what are you guys' predictions for 2024? Let's run through multiple scenarios. I want to talk about what this means for democracy. What are we really seeing happen in front of our eyes? And what trends do you see that are sort of unfolding that are positive and potentially negative trends? There's a lot to digest here. So let's go in all different places. We'll start with Mikey. What do you think's going on, Mike?
I think I can make this quick. I think Trump did a fantastic job. I kind of alluded to
in what aspect? I agree with you, but yeah.
Let me clarify that.
Yeah.
I think, him not being a bully was great, because it's so counterintuitive to his nature. And I think that was the only win for either one of them in the debate. Outside of that, it was irrelevant. Seeing Trump just kind of let his enemy talk and defeat himself was brilliant strategy.
So sad.
As far as democracy, the thing that I've been thinking about is like
I was thinking about the moment when he just very quietly and subtly goes, I don't understand what he said in that last sentence, and I don't think he knows either. Like, at that point, he wasn't even being a bully.
It
was the most hands off. Like, I kind of feel sorry for him. Like, I don't know what he just said. I don't think what he knows either. And in the past, he'd have been like, "What the fuck are you saying, Joe?" Like, so it was just such a really quiet, like,
that was the line of the debate for sure.
Like, that was the line
that and the handicap. That's the biggest lie of all.
Yeah. But he had chances to be a bully, and where he did it, it was like very subtle, not very aggressive. So sorry, I did not want to interrupt you, but just as you're saying, like, he had a chance to not be, I was just reliving that moment where he just goes like, I don't think he knows I don't know what he just said. I don't think he knows either. I'm like, that was as mean as he got, and nobody could even, and even on the Democratic side, everybody just had to go like, yeah, that's an accurate statement.
That was like a bullet to the head, man. Ugh.
Sorry, but Mike, democracy.
Mike, you finish your
what's it
thought.
mean? Sorry.
Well, I just find it so fascinating. By the way, I think Trump is probably a great president. I mean, I think he will be a great president for, what we need in the next 4 years, and he'll probably win unless, there's so many, I won't go into this because I'm sure you guys are going to address it. But if they could replace Biden and it wasn't Kamala, then maybe it wouldn't be that hard to beat Trump. My thing on democracy, I just have been thinking about, like, how did we get here?
Yeah.
Why do we have two, old guys that should be retired? And Trump said it during the debate too. He's like, I don't want to be running for president. He's like, but I don't have a choice. Why are we at a place in America where a guy like Trump has to say that? Like, I didn't want to come back here, but I need to save the country. Why is nobody younger, better, stepping up? And I think it's because of, and it's sad, but I think it's because of the political machine. And, you know, even Biden saying I was the youngest senator ever elected and the longest running. I'm just like, that's not a good thing. And the reason why we don't have better options is because people don't want to be part of this nasty, nasty machine that has become politics. And I think anybody that would be, you know, worth half their weight in salt probably doesn't want to put up with the nonsense and the garbage. So it's just kind of sad.
Mooch, let's go to you.
Dude, there's so much stuff. And sure, just about all of our listeners probably listen to the All In podcast, but the conversations that they had last week were brilliant about like, what could the Democrats do now? Like, what's really going on? You know, why can't they bring in another person? And I have so much of this belief now that the people that would want to be inserted, like I used to for a while think, hey, at the last second, they're going to bring in Newsom, they're going to bring in somebody. But now I have this belief that I think whoever they would bring in wants to win. Like nobody wants to be John McCain, where they get thrown in and they know they're not going to win. The one chance they ever have to run for president, they're just going to get swept and it's not even going to be close, right? You guys remember that election, right? So that it was John's one chance. Nobody wants to come in right now with 4 months left in the election and take Biden's place, especially anybody that's good.
The odds are low.
Yeah, because because what's going to happen is like maybe in 4 years they got a shot, but coming in this late, they don't have a shot. So no one good is going to get substituted in right now or going to be willing to say like, sure, I'll let him go beat up on me. Mitt Romney, right? Oh, fine. I'll let him go beat up on me and not get elected. This is awesome. Biden is 81 years old, right? Trump is 78 years old. George W. Bush, one of my favorite presidents ever. I'm a big fan of the Bush family. He was president 20 years ago. He's also 78 years old. Right? He stopped being president 20 years ago, and he's the same age as those guys. Age shouldn't matter. Age does matter. We saw that during the debate. I thought it was a fascinating thing to watch. It was entertaining in one sense. It was also like kind of sad in a couple. I mean, entertainment is what it was. The sad thing is a presidential debate should not be entertainment. I mean, I had so many friends and people that were at bars watching and people were laughing and the clips were going to be there. You know, when I thought back at our predictions, we said, you know, one of our things was like, we hope that Trump doesn't like be a bully. You know, I also said, I think Biden's probably going to show up pretty well because 4 years ago, he did show up pretty well. You know, when I didn't expect him to. And we said he just has to perform okay and he'll win. But my big takeaway is he didn't perform okay. Couple shocking things, just really quick. Though, like one of the articles that I was pulling says 538's forecast hasn't moved since the debate. Their forecast is exactly the same of who's going to win and how much he's going to win by. You know, like see that you know, it's just too late to bring anyone else in. The predictions haven't really changed that much, and Trump was favored anyway. And again, if you want to hear a bunch of random chances of things, the All In was a great one. And then new website AI software to predict the presidential race after the debate. Sports website used AI to predict who would win, and it says President Trump will win 311 electoral votes to capture the White House. I mean, I think AI is pretty smart. I think some of our predictions will start to get better and better. Sure, other things. So big takeaway was Trump won that debate, but it was also, but Biden just shot himself in the foot on most of it. Trump, even the golf thing, they were like, Trump, you're not in good shape. And he's like, I'm in great shape. I went golfing last week.
That was great.
And then Biden's like, well, I'm a better golfer than you. It was like, man, that was Biden screwed that up. Like Trump didn't start that pissing match. They were like, hey, are you healthy? He's like, yeah, I just won my club championship. I'm still healthy. And Biden was the one that tried to take the shot and lost. All right. Another like one highlight of the debate that was crazy. And a comedian actually relived this moment. They were like, Trump, you screwed up abortion. Now, if there's any topic out there where the Democrats are going to be able to come back on something, it's on abortion. And it's like a softball to Biden.
It was a layup. Layup. Here it is.
Hey, here it is, Trump. You screwed up abortion. What are you going to say to all the people that are about that? And he's like, I stand by my decision, right? It goes back to Joe. And President Biden says, Man, I don't remember it offhand all the way, but it was just so crazy. He goes, well, yeah, he's talking about babies getting killed. He's talking about the 8-year-old girl this week that was killed by immigrants, and he even went to her funeral. And so like he would rather, and the comedians are like, you just took abortion, a topic that you could win, and instead of saying, Trump, you messed this up, you actually attacked yourself and said, well, immigrants are killing more young girls than abortion is. It was like, what are you doing? Biden should have never mentioned immigration, girls getting killed by illegal immigrants, funerals that Trump was at last week. It was like he had this layup to just go, all he had to do was say, no, Trump, you were wrong on that. You should not do abortion. And instead, he's like, well, I'm killing little girls too, and you're going to their funerals. It was crazy that little.
It was a total mess.
He took a softer stance on abortion, though, too. I mean, when they dug in on Roe v. Wade, and he said, hey, look, at the end of the day, I'm pushing this back onto the states.
I thought that was a great answer, right, Maddie? That's a great
answer, because most Republicans, and this is where, you get these middle of the road centrists or, middle right or middle left people that are like, hey, like it's not my place to tell a woman what she can do with her body. And when the Republicans go hard and staunch on their no, and it's the moment of this, and he was like, hey, look, I know not everybody in my party agrees with me on this, but at the end of the day, I have the ability to push this back onto the states and, trust that the states will figure this out and what's best for them. I don't think taking it all the way up to 9 months and killing babies, is right.
Yeah.
Early term abortion, I might get behind is essentially the takeaway I took from that. But he did a good job answering that. And to the point in general, he was more poised than I've seen him up on a stage than ever before, ever, by far.
More humble.
Let me ask you guys.
States having decisions, like, just to take on that before we change it. Like, I think it's so strong since 2020 is how important it is to, like, there should be more laws that are state-based instead of country-based, because it's really easy to move states if you disagree, and it's not really easy to move countries if you disagree. So I'm a big fan of complicated things to go, it's up to the state.
I think it's a brilliant answer, brilliant strategy, well articulated. And I think most people, like you said, Maddie, that if you're a centrist, if you're a Republican, if you're a libertarian, that makes common sense to me.
Yeah, you can get behind that, right?
You can get behind
and that's such a polarizing topic that drives a wedge between both parties.
I want to talk about getting past the debate. It's been a mess for the last 2 weeks for the Democratic Party. There has been mixed messaging about pushing him out. He's made it really clear he doesn't want to leave. Is this a scandal that we are hiding the cognitive ability of our president and all of the people that are trying to protect it? What does that mean for how media works, how politics works? He can't get in front of anyone for an hour or two, hold his own ground, have a conversation without a teleprompter. Should we be concerned about that? Is the president now just like the Queen of England, like a figurehead where people are just pumping him around, pumping stuff in him and just throwing him around? Like, what's going on? And how is this not, I was listening to somebody talk about it, and for all intents and purposes, this is a crisis for the Democratic Party, right?
Majorly.
And so how they deal with this crisis is also a signal. It's like in any leadership position, when things go wrong, right? A board of directors or CEO, how do you deal with crisis? Well, it seems to me that the Democratic Party is actually failing at this crisis. They can't agree on anything. They have a toxic situation at hand, and they are not showing their ability to work through it in a productive way, and hiding and scheming just doesn't seem like it's working. So what does this mean? And is this just what the world of American government looks like now?
What's crazy to me is that this debate, as much as I already knew it, showcased to the world that Joe Biden is not the guy in charge right now. He's not. Like, and so that then led to the question of who the hell is in charge of our country right now? Because it sure ain't this dude. And so then that went into further discussion, which is what a lot of camps and circles have been talking about, which is this, hey, it might still be a lot of the Obama administration still pulling the strings behind Joe Biden. And then you got a lot of the globalists that are very tied in with the, left agenda, probably more so, right? And you're seeing how fractured the Democratic Party is. And when all of a sudden, all of these calls after the debate were, that was a total disaster, he needs to step aside. And then that got louder and louder and louder. A couple days go by and he goes, I ain't stepping aside. And a lot of people are saying that's Jill Biden, that's Hunter Biden. A lot of people in his close circle and camp are like, you can't step aside. You gotta see this through. Now they're in total disarray, backtracking on comments because they were trying to push him out. Now, just so you guys are aware, Democrats are holding a virtual roll call on July 21st where delegates will officially nominate their presidential candidate. This is their real deadline, not the Democratic National Convention. If Biden survives through July 21st, then they're officially going to be stuck behind in supporting this guy. Another
big deal.
It is. Yep. And so another complicating element, the Democrats' blitz primary idea would land right in the middle of the Olympics. NBC paid $4.38 billion to broadcast the Olympics. And you better believe that they're going to lobby hard to ensure that this blitz and any of the politics and eye-grabbing attention does not pull any of the eyes away from the Olympics. So there's so much going on behind the scenes with media and how media is tied in very heavily with the Democratic Party. It is very interesting to see how what's going on behind the curtains is now spilling out into the public, and the media can no longer hide it. They have to address it to the American people. I mean, I don't know if you guys follow Peter Doocy, but he's somebody that he's a reporter. He's always in the press briefing room, and he's just always asking the tough, honest questions that most logical Americans want. And he asked Karine Jean-Pierre, whatever, I think it was yesterday or the day before, like, hey, if there's a nuclear war and Biden is saying he can't meet or take calls or do anything after 8 p.m. because of his bedtime and he's too tired, like, who handles these nuclear, issues? Oh, we have a team for that, right? But the point is, he is not a president that is fit for leadership. So then you ask, who is really leading the country? And you can see how fractured that leadership is, that is no longer able to be hidden, swept under the rug, or kept behind the curtain. And I think that's losing a lot of trust of the American people. And I'll just say this, my wife is a never Trumper. She's not a big fan of Trump. And after that debate, she goes, I can't vote for Biden. I cannot believe I'm saying this. I think I'm going to vote for Trump. I cannot believe I'm saying this.
I think your wife is not alone in that, buddy.
And that's what I'm saying.
I think there's millions of Americans.
I can see the pain in Ash's face as he's realizing he's going to vote for Trump too, instead of Kamala.
I'm just embarrassed about. What this looks like. I mean, you got Putin, you got Xi sipping on tequila while they're watching this, just having a damn good time. Like, this is like seriously the most powerful country in the world. You got some old dude who can't even, like, just guys, it's sad.
How about this though?
It's just sad that this is where we're at. Really?
If Trump's elected, do you think the Russia-Ukraine war keeps going or it's over?
It's over.
Over. If Trump's elected, do you think the Israel-Palestine fight keeps going or do you think it's over?
Over. All this stuff ends.
It's like, it doesn't matter if you like him or you don't. There are some major topics that we know the world is not going to play around with him. And I watched this video the other day. Maybe I shared it with you. I don't think so. Where this guy said, they interviewed a guy and said, what was the most powerful moment you saw with Trump?
Such a good story.
And the guy goes, well, it was when he was meeting with Al Qaeda and said, we are going to be leaving Afghanistan and we are going to be leaving slowly. But if any U.S. troops are killed over the next 2 years, then I am going to essentially kill you and your family. And the guy's like, huh? And the person that's a translator says, like, and he goes, no, tell him. And he shows him a picture of the guy's house.
A satellite image
of his house. That's like, if any Americans are hurt during the next couple of years, and the guy,
take your ass out.
Right. And the guy's quote, and I don't even know who the guy was, but someone that worked in the government with them. And it was like, and he said, and over the next couple of years, nothing happened. And so so we can say, like, oh, we hate him or we don't, but there's two major issues in the world right now that I think we're all really confident that, like, we don't know how he's going to fix it, but he'll fix it.
Well,
Border and war.
I think he said in the debate too. I mean, he kind of listed off, like, look, when I was president, we were not in any wars. We had a strong border, all those things. Like, if you're listening to that, he's right. You
Yeah.
can't argue with him. He's right.
He's right. Now, part of your question, Ash, is you just said like, hey, one of the things that I learned this last week, just listening to other pods in the news and things, was this concept of this idea of the realization that like, who is really pulling the strings? If they actually pull Biden off the ticket because he's unfit to run, then that also means he's unfit to lead. And so that's a big thing too. If they actually decide, like the other implication, if on the 21st they're like, okay, we can't have Biden be our nominee, then potentially within weeks, Kamala has to become the president, because we're admitting that he's unfit to be in office, because he is saying outwardly, I want to keep running. I'm still here. So that's a mess I hadn't even like thought of or considered before. And that I think becomes part of that implication, which makes it even stranger.
I think also go ahead, Mike.
Well, when you see things like this, I mean, I'm sure you guys do this all the time in your business, but like you kind of war game it out. Like I hadn't thought a lot about it. There's been conversations about replacing people, but have you ever had something happen like in your business where an employee comes and something has happened and you're like, why did I not know this? Yeah. And I feel like that's the Democrats right now. Like, why did we not know that if we replaced Joe Biden, we couldn't use any of the campaign contributions? Why did we not know that if we replaced Joe Biden because he's incoherent, Kamala would have to be president immediately? Like, did they not know this? Or did they actually think he was going to perform well? Because I know,
right, because they could have replaced him a year ago.
Yeah. Well, like the media obviously woke up on election or on debate night and understood for the first time ever. I know that's like not the truth. What they realized is that they can't hide it anymore. And I just don't understand, like, are the Democrats like asking their aides, like, why did you not tell us that we couldn't just replace him after the debate? Or did they actually think that he was going to do well enough that night that they would continue to fool us? I'm just like, I don't know what's going on here, man.
It's crazy. Well, what they are trying to do is take a few last swings at keeping whatever loopholes they can find to support getting more votes open. The House Democrats launched a united effort to block the election bill. I think it's called the SAFE Act or something like that, which is requiring voters to prove American citizenship to vote. And it hit the floor, and 100% votes of no from the Democratic Party to actually just have people say, hey,
so they get 12 million clean votes, right, Maddie? Like,
well, I mean, it's how would it make any sense for me to be like, you know what, I'm going to go over to, the UK and I'm going to vote for their president, and I'm going to go over to, crazy. Africa and vote for their president. And that makes no logical sense, right? I mean, if you look at the amount of things that you have to show ID for today, just to get access to purchase alcohol, cigarettes, open a bank account, apply for food stamps, apply for welfare, apply for Medicaid, Social Security, apply for a job, unemployment, a house, buy a house, mortgage, drive a car, rent a car, buy a car. The list goes on and on. But voting, no, that's racist. How dare you ask for an ID to do that, right? So just things like that, when you think about that, it's pretty wild. And I would just say us compared to, let's say, an Argentina, I'd say we're a more advanced country. Would you agree? So
I'd hope.
Argentina just hand counted 99.9% of their 27 million paper ballots in less than 6 hours. There's no reason that can't be done in the United States.
Yeah, it's because we don't want to.
We don't want to, right? So when you start, just let's just be honest and
sad,
reasonable and logical.
How are we here? It's just dumb
about
it's
these
just
things.
Dumb.
There's no reason why somebody on the left can make a logical argument for why that makes sense, except for the fact that they don't want that loophole closed, and they want the amount of individuals that could have migrated over to the U.S. to be able to vote on behalf of the Democratic candidate.
Have you guys seen that video of Barack Obama talking about his third term? Did you guys ever see that?
No.
Okay, I'm going to share this. Watch
That's
this.
what it's been like.
Well, his third term is going to be his wife running.
Watch this.
No, he's in it right now.
I would say this is his third term.
It's his third term.
And what you know now, do you wish like you had a third term? And I used to say, you know what, if I could make an arrangement where I had a stand-in, a front man or front woman, and they had an earpiece in
Oh my
my
God.
basement in my sweats, looking through the stuff, and then I could sort of deliver the lines, but somebody else was doing all the talking and
Oh my
ceremony.
God.
I'd
That can't
fine
be
with that.
real.
It
That
is
can't
real.
Oh
be
my
real.
God.
It's 100% real because
I saw that a long
this-
time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
If you're a
Oh
web
my
designer,
God.
hero
That's
card.
scary.
Dude,
Huh?
that's exactly, yeah. If I had a front man, well, because when the question that you mentioned a second ago, if he's not running the country, who is? And then it's really, the Obama
you know-
family.
You know what I'm interested in is like, look, this is still a human being, right? He's an 81-year-old human being. It's like, at what point is pride and arrogance like take over? I mean, do you really want to spend the next 4 years of your last few years of your life
Yeah.
like this way? Like, spend it with your grandkids, spend it with your wife, like go to your beach. Like, really, this is how you want your legacy to be remembered? I mean,
Do you believe
I'm
Trump
so
when he says,
surprised.
do you believe Trump when he says, I don't want to be doing this anymore, but I have to?
No.
No, he's an egomaniac too.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, but like Ash's point, like I think that Biden probably does not want to be doing it. Like it's almost
But
like torture.
Biden is smart. Look, I mean, I think if you guys know, last week in the UK, the Labour Party won in a landslide election. Okay, took it away from Rishi something. I forget the prime minister's name. He's the Conservative Party. Landslide, like 80%. Okay, and the guy who won for the Labour Party, which is essentially a libertarian or a liberal party, it's the Democratic Party over there, is like this boring old dude that like nobody even thought would win. He had a landslide. You put any decent, coherent, young, capable dude as the face of the Democratic Party right now, I think the non-Trump voters would be like, all right,
Yep.
we're done.
Agreed.
We're good here. And the fact that that's not obvious when you see all these elections all around the world signaling to Americans about this is the way the world is sort of moving, and we can't get out of our own way, or that party can't get out of its own way, I think is just, it's obscene. It's unbelievable. And I think like pivoting to Kamala, even though I don't think is a good idea, is a strategy that says, hey, listen, everybody get Kamala immediately. Get Kamala in the front. She's a woman. She's colored. That checks a lot of boxes. Get every prominent person standing behind her. George Clooney, get Biden, get Obama, get Oprah, get every single lady, every single person standing right behind her, say, this is our candidate. She gets elected. I mean, like, I don't know.
That's a horrible idea.
I know it's a horrible idea, which is, I mean, to be honest with you, they're not going to do it. That's what's
She won't
fun
do
about it.
They won't do it because
She wouldn't win against him.
she wouldn't get elected.
She doesn't have a better chance than Biden does.
No way.
Yeah, I love this, man.
And Michelle
Well-
Obama came out publicly and said she's not running. She doesn't want
Well,
to
I'm
do it.
excited because honestly, I feel like I do feel like Trump's going to get elected. I feel like it will be good for America. I feel like it will be good for our economy. I think everyone's 401ks will continue to increase more than if a Biden presidency happened. So, like I said, it's onwards and upwards.
If I was Trump right now and all this deep state stuff that's been exposed in the media and Joe Biden, and I would triple my freaking security. Right now.
Hell yeah. I wouldn't. I saw a meme come out the other day of like, Trump Force One is like a Boeing plane. And, like that's one way that he could potentially go down. You think, there's some people on the left that are flat out calling for assassination of him. Like, like celebrities and like.
That used to be full on
Trump?
illegal, right? They used to be full on illegal to even joke about that out loud, and they get arrested.
you don't see people doing
Dude, the
that
safest place for Trump is in jail right now. Go to jail. He'll be safe and he'll get elected. That's my prediction.
Yeah.
How
My only other point to that would be is, I see a lot of people on the right going, and you see the poll showing it, like now is not the time to get comfortable if you're Trump. Like the Democrats they've shown that they're willing to
do whatever it takes.
Whatever.
Oh, baby.
Whatever lengths they possibly need to go to in order to win. And I don't expect them to change that tune in any capacity over the next 4 months. So it's only going to get crazier and new stuff is going to continue to come out. And it's going to be Get your popcorn ready.
I don't know.
I don't want to speak this out there, but like, could you imagine what would happen if both parties had to replace their front runner like 2 months before the election? That would just be so insane.
Oh, that would be a movie.
That would be crazy.
That would be a movie if it was like, now what do we do? And who's going to get inserted? They restart everything, but it's debates every day.
We're in the Matrix.
We got to mention really quick as we're finishing this up that the big ruling this week of a president is immune of official acts that they've done during their presidency. And so the January 6th stuff, all the things that, it comes down to the question of now it's on the prosecutor to even bring charges. Before they can bring charges, they need to prove that this is outside a normal act of president. And all the crazy replies people did was like, well, now someone can assassinate somebody and not go to jail. And it's like, in one sense, no, but they could bomb another country. It's like the onerous of no, but they could send a missile and kill somebody from another country and they're immune. I thought it was a well done thing by the Supreme Court to go no, if a president is doing a presidential act that they believe is a presidential act, then they are immune. And so all that January 6th stuff, I think it's interesting that now it puts it in the spin of having to prove if a president thinks that there is fraud and they are preventing fraud in an election, that's an official act. It was really interesting, a thing that came out last week, and I saw so many sad people out there on the other side too. It was a really bad week for the left because one, they saw
for the anti-Trumpers.
For the anti-Trumpers, it was a bad week because after the debate, it was unquestionable, and then it was also this reality of and he's going to be immune for those things that he was going to try to get charged with. And it was
I think that
the end of the world in their mind.
I think that's spinning, to be honest with you. I think it's convenient to spin it and make it about Trump, about this ruling. I think that's the media's doing. I think what the benefit of this ruling is good for all presidents, not just Trump. It's good for all presidents. You guys as leaders, if you knew that at any one moment an employee could sue you for the decisions you're making at any time in the future, you would make no decisions.
Yeah, it's the same thing with what the cops went through, after defund the police.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right?
Just like that.
You got to be able to do your job in the capacity that your challenging job requires you to do, and
have head cover.
Yeah, and in certain roles like that, there's a lot of things that if we're going to start playing black and white and getting into the letter of the law and everything, nobody's going to sign up for that.
Yeah, exactly. So if everything is the president's responsibility, the president is going to take zero responsibility and do nothing. So I think that this got a little bit of spin. I think that one of the justices went off on X and said some things that she probably shouldn't have said. But the Chief Justice said something that I thought was the most important is listen, we're not making a decision here just about Trump. We're making a decision for all future presidents for the future, which I think is the most important thing. But yeah, it is. I thought it was a good thing that they did that.
That was a good thing. I other than the Trump haters, I think most people think it's good. Mike, I can see that you've got a big idea.
Let's wrap it
before we close out.
Mikey, go.
I don't have an idea.
Okay. Well, there you go, guys.
He's writing an email because you're boring him. Okay.
Yeah. No. Good discussion today. Lots of fun topics. I think it's a fun time to be an American. We didn't even talk about Bobby Kennedy and his chances. Lots of fun things going on in the world of American politics and the world of real estate and the economy. Who knew that we would talk so much about politics when we launched this podcast? Who knew, guys?
I still reference your boy.
Huh?
I still reference your boy Vivek and the classic quote,
Mr. VP, baby.
Whether you like politics or not, politics likes you.
Let me tell you one thing. Next week, I think it's next week or the following week, there's a Republican National Convention. So in the next 2 weeks, we could find out who the VP is.
We will.
We will.
Yeah.
And we're going to find out whether Vivek, our boy, is going to be the VP. And let me tell you, I'm predicting right now, if he's the VP, he's president 2024. Boom. There it is. He's president. He becomes president in 2024. All right, guys. Well, there's another great episode of the King's Table. On behalf of myself, Maddie Aitchison, and Aaron Amuchastegui, we are the King's Table. Thanks so much for listening. Peace out.